The stars were calm. Space looked peaceful. But in the heart of the galaxy, a meeting was taking place that would decide the future of many worlds. In a giant silver hall on the planet Prevails, the leaders of the Galactic Empire sat around a large glowing table. They were tall, with golden eyes and shining metal armor. Their ships ruled the skies. Their name brought fear across thousands of planets. The Dravams believed they were the strongest in the galaxy. And today they laughed. They were laughing at Earth. A small blue planet far from the center of the galaxy had recently joined the Galactic Council. The humans came with respect. They shared ideas and asked for peace. But their ships looked small. Their weapons looked old. Their technology seemed weak. The Dravans saw the humans and smiled. Then they laughed. "These Earth people are funny," said one Draven general. "They fly in ships that look like flying cans. Do they really think they can be part of us?" Another laughed louder. "They came in ships that shake in space. My training drone has better shields than their main battleship." The laughter filled the room. Even the council members, who were usually quiet, said nothing to stop it. "They should stay on their little blue planet," said the leader of the Dravens. "This galaxy is not for them. It is for the strong." The humans had noticed the mocking. Their diplomats kept calm. They said little, but their eyes showed they understood. They were not angry. They were watching, listening, learning. Back on Earth, in a deep command center under the oceans, a group of human scientists and commanders were watching the same meeting through hidden cameras. The room was quiet. No one spoke. A woman in a white coat stood and looked at the others. "So they think we are weak," she said. "That's good. Let them think that." Across the table, a man with silver hair nodded slowly. "They don't know what we've built. They don't know what we've hidden." The screen changed. It showed a human ship flying near the edge of Draven space. It looked old and slow, but inside, it was not what it seemed. This ship had no name. It was part of a quiet project called Shadow Wing. It carried the latest human technology, systems that could not be seen by enemy eyes, tools that could move without sound, and shields that could copy the look of other ships. The ship sent one final message before disappearing from radar. "Message for Earth Command. We are inside. They have no idea. Let it begin." Then silence. On Earth, people watched the news. Some had heard that aliens laughed at their ships. Some were sad. Some were angry. But most were quiet, waiting. They believed something was happening behind the curtain. They trusted their scientists. They trusted their Space Force. Earth had faced many problems in the past. It had survived wars, storms, and darkness. The people of Earth knew one thing: never show your full hand until the time is right. In the Galactic Council, a new meeting was called. This time, a human ambassador stood in front of all the leaders. He spoke softly. "We came in peace. We still wish for peace. But if we are tested, we will answer." A Dravan leader laughed again. "Answer with what?" "With your flying cans." The human smiled. Not a big smile, just a quiet one. Then he said, "Maybe." Then he left the hall. Back in the command center under Earth's oceans, many lights began to blink. Quiet voices spoke into headsets. No alarms, no rush, just calm movement. The kind of quiet before something big. One of the younger officers looked nervous. He turned to his captain. "Do you think they'll attack us?" The captain looked at the screen showing the Draven ships in space. "They might," he said, "but they won't laugh for long." Far above Earth, small shadows moved in space. They had no names. They made no sound. No one saw them. No one even knew they were there. But they were waiting. Waiting for the moment the galaxy would stop laughing. Waiting for the moment Earth would rise. The stars above Earth looked the same, but something had changed. Quiet energy moved through the command centers hidden deep below the surface. In every space station orbiting Earth, teams were awake and watching. no sirens, no bright lights, just quiet movement, careful hands, and focused eyes. Everyone was waiting. Across the galaxy, in the glowing halls of the Draven Empire, there was growing confidence. They believed Earth had no real plan. They thought humans were simply afraid to fight. Their leaders called Earth a tiny world with no future in the stars. So they decided to send a small message. It began with a fleet of 10 ships, strong, fast, and filled with the latest tools. The Dravens called it a peace visit, but everyone knew the truth. It was a show of power. They wanted Earth to feel small, to feel pressure. They expected the humans to surrender or beg for help. As the Draven ships moved closer to Earth's space, they scanned the area. They saw a few old human ships floating nearby. Some looked like cargo vessels. Others looked like patrol units. None of them looked strong. "They still send these weak things," one Draven pilot said with a smile. "We will be home by dinner." But Earth did not answer their messages. No ship moved. No signal came. The humans stayed silent. The Draven fleet slowed down and approached the outer orbit of Earth's space. Everything was quiet. Space was open and peaceful, but something felt strange. The lead Draven commander gave an order. "Send drones to check the area." Tiny flying machines spread out in different directions. They moved quickly, scanning for any sign of a trap or trick. At first, they found nothing. Then, one by one, the drones stopped sending signals. The commander blinked at the screen. "Are they breaking?" "No, sir," said a pilot. "They're just not there anymore." "How can they just vanish?" No answer came. The Draven fleet moved closer. Still no response from Earth. No ships moved. No warning was given. And then something strange happened. One of the human ships disappeared from sight. It was there a moment ago. Then it was gone. "Did it go into hyperspace?" someone asked. "No energy burst. No jump trail. It's just gone," came the reply. Before the crew could react, another ship vanished. Then another. They were not destroyed. They were simply removed from the screen, like they had never existed. The Draven commander stood slowly. His voice was quiet now. "Where are they going?" No one answered. A young officer looked at his screen again and whispered, "Sir, we're being watched." All Draven eyes turned to him. "Watched? By who?" I don't know, but I feel it." And he was right. High above and far away, hidden in places no one expected, human eyes were watching. Not people, but machines. Machines built with patience and quiet knowledge. They studied every movement. They collected every signal. They learned every weakness. And still, Earth said nothing. On the ground, in the command room, an old human general walked past rows of quiet officers. His voice was soft. "They're looking for us." Another officer asked, "Should we show them?" The general shook his head. "Not yet." Back in space, the Draven ships began to move back. Something felt wrong, and their leader wanted to return home. Then one of their ships lost power for a moment. All lights blinked out. When they came back on, no one spoke. A message had appeared on their screen. 4 words. "This is your warning." No name, no source, just the message. The commander gave an order to leave, but before they could jump to hyperspace, their system froze again. This time, the stars around them blinked, just for a second. It was as if something was there, and gone. The ships turned. Engines warmed. They jumped back into deep space, leaving quickly without answers. On Earth, the old general watched the live feed. A small smile appeared on his face. "Let them think they escaped," he said. In the shadows of space, far from the light, something had awakened. Not with fire, but with silence. Not with power, but with careful planning. And now, humanity was ready. Not to attack, but to wait. Because the longer someone laughs at you, the more surprised they are when the laughing stops. Deep in the quiet space between stars, where the light of suns is only a soft glow, a strange feeling spread across the galaxy. It was not fear. It was not worry. It was something else. Confusion. Questions. Whispers. The Draven fleet had returned home. Their powerful ships, once filled with confidence, now moved slowly. The commanders no longer smiled. They spoke in short words. They looked at screens again and again, searching for answers that didn't come. Back on Prevails, the Draven capital, the council met in silence. No one laughed. The memory of their recent visit to Earth's space had left them thoughtful. Ships had disappeared, systems had frozen, and a simple message had appeared. This is your warning. Who had sent it? How? Why? No one knew. One leader stood slowly. His face showed worry, though he tried to hide it. We must understand what happened, he said. Earth must not be as weak as we thought. Others nodded. Some still believed the humans were bluffing. But a seed of doubt had grown. It was quiet, but it was there. Meanwhile, far from their eyes, on a secret moon hidden in a small star system, Earth's top minds were working together. This moon was not listed on any galactic map. It had no cities, no signs of life. But under its dusty surface, deep tunnels were filled with machines, labs, and command rooms. They called it Haven Base. Here, humans trained in silence. Scientists tested new ideas. Ships with shapes never seen before rested in dark hangars, ready but not shown. A woman in a dark uniform walked down a long hall, stopping at a large glass room. Inside, a strange engine was floating above the floor, humming softly. "Is it ready?" she asked the engineer inside. "Almost," he replied. "It doesn't just hide the ship. It changes how space feels around it. No one can track it unless they know it's there." She nodded. "Good. We may need it soon." In another part of the base, a group of young pilots sat around a table, watching a recording of the Draven fleet's visit. They turned back so fast, one of them said. Another replied, "They didn't know what they were looking at. We never showed them anything." A quiet voice came from behind them. An older man with sharp eyes entered the room. "And that's why we're ready. We don't win by shouting. We win by watching, by learning." The pilot stood as he entered. He looked at each of them. "Your training is almost over. Soon, you'll take your places in the shadows. You'll fly ships no one has ever seen. You'll listen more than you speak. And if the time comes, you'll remind the galaxy that silence does not mean weakness." Back in Draven space, something strange had begun to happen. Ships near the edge of their territory began reporting missing data. Patrol paths didn't match. Some navigation points no longer worked. It was as if maps were being changed without anyone noticing. One patrol captain sent a report. "We passed an asteroid field that was never there before. Then it was gone the next time we flew by. We're not sure what's real anymore." The Draven leaders held another meeting. They had never faced this kind of problem. There were no battles, no alarms, just silence, mystery, and doubt. And that made them more unsure than any weapon ever could. One scientist on their team offered an idea. What if Earth is not trying to win? What if they're only trying to make us wonder? This thought stayed in the minds of the council. It was strange, new, and it made them uncomfortable. Back on Earth, the old general who had watched the fleet retreat now stood on a mountain, looking up at the sky. Next to him, a young officer spoke. "They're confused now. Should we make our next move?" The general shook his head. "Not yet. Let the silence grow. Let their questions get louder. When they think they're ready to act, that's when we'll show the truth." The stars above blinked gently. Nothing moved. No sound came. But something was changing. Not in open battles. Not in loud speeches. In whispers. In steps taken in the dark. In ships that had no names and bases that didn't exist. Humanity had not waited in fear. It had prepared. quietly, carefully. And now, the galaxy was beginning to feel it. A thin layer of clouds moved slowly above Earth's surface. From space, it looked peaceful, just another blue planet with no sign of deep secrets. But far below, under mountains and oceans, something was happening. Old machines were waking up. They were not loud. They did not flash with color or roar with fire. They simply began to hum. Smooth, low sounds. Controlled. Balanced. In a long underground tunnel beneath the Arctic, teams of engineers stood around a circular chamber. Inside it, a large structure rotated gently. It had no name. No markings. Not even lights. Just a smooth, dark shell turning silently. A woman in a white coat checked her notes. "It's stable," she said. A voice on the speaker replied, "Begin the phase shift." She nodded. In 3, 2, 1. Outside the chamber, the snow above shook gently, though nothing on the surface noticed. The cold wind blew as always. Birds flew across the sky, but something had shifted deep below. Far across the galaxy, the Draven Empire watched Earth from a distance. No ship was sent again. Not yet. Instead, small probes were launched, machines with long-range sensors designed to watch quietly. They sent back data. But it made no sense. One probe recorded a human ship that blinked into view, then disappeared again. No sound, no signal, no light. Another probe followed a trail to a small moon, only to find that the moon wasn't there the next time it passed. One technician aboard a Draven research station leaned back from his screen. "Something's wrong with our readings." His commander looked confused. "Is it a machine problem?" He shook his head. "No, the machines are fine. It's space itself. It's not behaving normally." Back on Earth, in a quiet desert where nothing had moved for years, a single black door opened into the ground. A group of people stepped out. They wore simple suits. No names, no symbols, but their faces were focused. One of them carried a thin metal case. Inside, a small device blinked once, then stopped. He looked up at the others. It worked. "We're invisible now." The leader nodded. "Good. Let's begin the tests." Their plan was not about speed. It was about patience, about staying hidden until the time was right. Not to fight, not to show power, but to understand the game fully before moving a single piece. Meanwhile, back in Haven Base, the hidden moon where Earth's future was being shaped, a meeting was held in the lower chamber. Only 7 people were there, each one responsible for a different layer of the plan. A man with a silver badge stood and spoke quietly. "We've begun shifting parts of known space, a few degrees at a time. Not enough to notice, unless someone is really watching." A woman beside him asked, "Have the Dravens noticed?" He smiled slightly. "They're unsure. Their maps are starting to fail. They believe it's a mistake in their own systems." "Good," said another voice. "Let them question themselves first." The meeting continued. Each person reported small moves. Unseen ships moving across trade routes, satellites that watched other satellites, signals buried inside space dust. They were building something. Not just tools or ships. They were building a story. A new story of Earth. But this time, Earth would not speak it. Others would. The galaxy would write it on their own, piece by piece, not knowing they were being led to it. Back in Draven space, tension began to rise quietly. Ships started flying slower. Pilots double-checked maps. Some crews even turned around without orders. They said something felt off. Reports came in. One starport lost contact with a nearby system for 3 hours. When it returned, no one could explain what happened. A space traveler claimed he saw a planet appear and vanish again during his journey, like a reflection in water. A famous Draven scientist wrote an article titled, "Are We Alone in Knowing Nothing?" It became popular, not because it gave answers, but because it asked the right questions. What if Earth was not weak? What if they were not hiding because they were scared? What if they had always known what was coming? On Earth, the general stood on a quiet beach, watching waves touch the shore. A younger officer joined him. "Sir, the outer fields are holding. The system shifts are working." "They're unsure." The general nodded. "They're still watching, yes." "Yes, sir. But they're starting to argue among themselves. Some think we're using technology they don't understand. Others believe we're doing nothing at all." He smiled softly. "Let them wonder. Let them build a story in their heads. Sometimes what you imagine is more powerful than what you see." And so, Earth remained silent. But silence was not weakness. It was a message. One the galaxy had not learned how to read yet. Across the vast distance between stars, something strange was happening. Ships in Draven space had begun to move in patterns that made no sense. The patrols no longer followed their usual routes. Some stations reported that their systems were malfunctioning. One ship even recorded a strange signal coming from a distant point in space, but when it tried to trace it, the source disappeared. No one could explain it. The Draven fleet was uneasy. Their once strong confidence in their technology began to crack. Every decision felt uncertain, as if the rules of the galaxy had changed without them being told. They had expected Earth to bow down, to be weak and vulnerable. But now, they weren't so sure. Back on Earth, the silence continued. The machines in hidden bases hummed quietly, shifting space and time in ways no one would notice unless they were looking closely. To the untrained eye, it seemed like nothing had changed. But there was a difference, a subtle change that had grown over time. One night, in a dimly lit command room under the surface of the Earth, an officer sat alone, watching the stars through a large glass window. He had been monitoring the Draven movements for weeks, but tonight, something felt different. It wasn't the ships themselves. It was the air around them. The way they seemed to hesitate, to question. He called the general on a secure line. "Sir, I think they're getting closer to the truth," he said. The general's voice was calm, almost too calm. "Let them. It's part of the plan." The officer frowned. "But sir, they're confused. They're starting to believe that we've done something they can't understand. Something beyond our technology." The general's voice softened, as if he had been waiting for this moment. "That's exactly what we want them to believe. Confusion is more dangerous than any weapon." The officer paused. "But when will they make their move?" "When they feel ready," the general replied. "And when they do, we will be ready. We've already shown them what we can do. Now we just wait for them to come to us." The officer nodded, though he didn't completely understand. He trusted the general's judgment, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. Meanwhile, far away in a hidden room on a Draven research station, a group of scientists sat gathered around a table, their faces tense. They had been trying for weeks to understand the strange behavior of Earth's space. The more they studied, the more questions they had. It didn't help that their technology couldn't make sense of it. Every time they thought they had a breakthrough, something would slip away from them. One of the scientists, a young woman with sharp eyes, stood up suddenly. "I think I found it." The others looked up, their interest piqued. "It's not just that their ships vanish or their signals disappear," she said, pointing to the screen. "It's space itself. Earth is changing the way space works, just a little bit at a time. They're bending things without anyone noticing." The others stared at the screen, trying to understand what she was showing them. The numbers didn't make sense. The maps were wrong. "Are you saying they've learned how to control space?" another scientist asked, disbelief in his voice. She nodded slowly. "Yes, but they're not doing it the way we thought. It's not about technology. It's about something deeper, something we can't explain yet." The room fell silent. The implications were too vast to consider. If Earth had found a way to control space itself, to hide it, to twist it, then what else could they be hiding? One of the older scientists leaned back in his chair. "We need to report this to the council. If this is true, everything changes. But the young woman shook her head. We can't report it yet. They won't believe us. They'll think we're just seeing things. We need more proof. We need to see this with our own eyes. The tension in the room grew as the team began to prepare for their next move. They were no longer simply scientists. They were now part of a race to understand something far beyond their knowledge. And if they couldn't figure it out soon, the consequences would be catastrophic. Back on Earth, the general was watching all of this unfold through a secure feed. The Dravens were getting closer to the truth, and that was exactly what he had expected. They were moving into the final phase of their plan, the part that would truly test their enemies. The general stood up, staring at the map of the galaxy on the wall in front of him. He traced a line across the stars with his finger, a line that represented humanity's quiet path. "We've waited long enough," he said quietly to himself. "Now it's time to show them who we really are." His words were not loud, but they carried the weight of everything that had come before. Humanity had been building for this moment, not with fire or chaos, but with calm, careful steps. They had shown patience, and now the galaxy would see the results of that patience. But one thing was certain: the Draven Empire would never expect what was coming next. The quiet tension in Draven space had become unbearable. It wasn't just the missing ships, the disappearing moons, or the strange signal patterns that troubled them anymore. It was the fact that they no longer felt certain of anything. Every sensor reading, every ship report, seemed to hold more questions than answers. They were starting to feel as though they were standing at the edge of something vast and unknowable, and the longer they watched Earth, the more they feared what might be hiding beneath the surface. The Draven fleet had been carefully observing Earth for months, but now reports were starting to pile up in confusion. Some ships had arrived at destinations only to find no trace of their targets. Others had tracked unknown signals to areas that simply vanished without a trace. A senior commander in the Draven fleet sat at his desk, staring at the star maps. The coordinates marked on his screen were familiar, except that they no longer made sense. Every time his ships crossed a path, the star systems had shifted. The maps were changing, and they couldn't figure out why. He tapped a button on his desk, bringing up a new set of data. The numbers on the screen were wild, showing random shifts in gravitational fields. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be happening. "Commander," a voice called from the doorway. He looked up, startled, as a technician stepped in. "Sir, we have another anomaly. One of our probes just reported an object, a large one, entering a system that should be empty. But when we checked, the object was gone, as if it never existed." The commander stood up, his face pale. "Another one?" "Yes, sir. We've been monitoring the area for hours, but there's no trace of it." The commander's mind raced. He had been around long enough to know that nothing happened without a reason, but he couldn't see the pattern. His hand trembled as he ran it through his hair. "What does it mean? What are we missing?" The technician hesitated before speaking. "Sir, I think we need to consider something. What if the problem isn't with our technology or our sensors? What if it's Earth? What if they've learned something we haven't?" The commander's eyes narrowed. "We've been underestimating them all this time." The technician nodded. "It's possible." Meanwhile, far from the Draven fleet's eyes, in the quiet halls of Haven Base, the humans were preparing for the next stage of their plan. It was no longer about hiding or moving in secret. It was about making a choice, the choice to reveal what they had been building in the dark. They had waited long enough. The general stood in front of a large screen, watching the reports from Earth's outermost satellites. The strange shifts in space, the unexpected disappearances of objects, everything was falling into place. The humans were now ready to act. "We've done everything we can," the general said to the officers gathered around him. "Now it's time to show them what we've been working on." A voice spoke up from the back of the room. "But sir, they're still watching. If we reveal ourselves now, it might cause panic. They'll react." The general turned, his expression unreadable. If we don't act now, we lose control. The Draven Empire is already starting to question us. They've already seen too much. The longer we wait, the harder it will be to convince them we're not just another weak species in the galaxy." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. The officers exchanged looks, but none spoke. They knew the truth of what he was saying. It was time. One officer stepped forward, holding a small device in his hand. "It's ready, sir. The space shifter is operational. It can bend the surrounding space to hide our fleet completely." The general nodded, satisfied. "Good. Begin the deployment. We move in silence." Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, the Draven fleet had just received a new report. The probe they had sent out to investigate the strange object had returned with new data. The findings were baffling. More inexplicable shifts in space, more disappearances. But this time, it was different. The fleet commander studied the new data, his mind spinning. There was something about the readings that didn't add up. Space wasn't behaving the way it should. It was as if it was being manipulated. He turned to his officers. "Have you ever seen anything like this before?" One officer replied, "No, sir. It's impossible." The commander stood up, his voice steady, but with a hint of growing fear. "If Earth has done this, if they've learned how to manipulate space itself, then we're facing something we don't fully understand. And that is dangerous." Back on Earth, the officers at Haven Base had just completed the deployment. The small, unassuming ships began to move, slipping silently into place. They were designed to bend the very fabric of space around them, making them invisible to even the most advanced sensors. Each one was a part of the larger puzzle that the Dravens could not yet see. The general watched as the ships disappeared from the galaxy's map. "Let them come," he whispered. "Let them keep searching. They'll never find us." The universe was quiet again. The only sounds were the quiet hums of machines and the soft whispers of the wind across distant worlds. But beneath this calm, a storm was brewing. The Draven Empire, once confident in their power, was now facing something they couldn't predict, something they couldn't understand. And humanity, with its quiet patience, had only just begun to reveal what it was capable of. The silence in the galaxy felt heavier than ever before. It had been days since the last transmission from the Draven fleet, and now even the stars seemed to hold their breath. The Draven Empire, once so certain of their dominance, was paralyzed by uncertainty. Every move they made seemed to lead them deeper into a puzzle they couldn't solve. In the heart of their fleet, the command center was filled with tension. The reports continued to flood in, each one more confusing than the last. The shifts in space had not stopped. Every time they thought they had a handle on what was happening, the galaxy seemed to change once again. One of the lead commanders, a seasoned officer who had seen countless battles, stood at the front of the room, staring at the data screen. His face was drawn, his expression tense. "It's clear now," he said softly. "We've underestimated them. They've learned how to control space itself." The room fell silent. The implications of those words were profound. If the humans had truly found a way to manipulate space, they had crossed a line that no other species had ever crossed. The commander's voice grew more intense as he continued. "We can't track them. We can't even predict where they'll be next." One of the younger officers spoke up, his voice trembling slightly. "What do we do now? If they can hide their entire fleet, if they can bend space around them, what are we supposed to fight?" The commander looked at him, his eyes dark. "We don't fight. Not yet. Not until we understand what we're dealing with. But we do need to prepare. We need to make sure we're ready when the time comes." Far across the galaxy, in the hidden depths of Earth's secure bases, the humans were watching the same reports. The general sat in front of a massive screen, observing the shifting patterns and the confusion spreading among the Draven fleet. There was a quiet pride in his eyes. He had known this day would come, the day when humanity would no longer be underestimated, the day when they would show the galaxy what they were capable of. "They're starting to see it," the general said quietly, as if speaking to himself. "The galaxy will never look the same again." He turned to his officers, who were all standing at attention, watching the screens intently. "It's time for the next step. We need to show them that Earth is no longer a target. We've already proven that we're not just some weak species, but now we show them what we can do." The officers exchanged nervous glances, but they trusted the general's judgment. They had been working on this project for years, and now it was finally time to make it a reality. "Begin the final deployment," the general commanded. At that moment, the hum of the machines grew louder, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to vibrate with energy. The final phase of humanity's plan was underway. Back in the Dragon fleet, the confusion was turning into something more dangerous. Fear. The uncertainty that had gripped their command had spread throughout the entire empire. Their intelligence reports were no longer reliable. Their scouts had failed. The humans had become an enigma. And the more the Dragon tried to understand, the more elusive the answers became. The commander in charge of the fleet paced back and forth in the command center. "We need to make contact with the council," he said, his voice tight. "We need to figure out what's happening before it's too late." A technician stood up from his station, his face pale. "Sir, I don't know how to say this, but there's something else. We've detected a new signal coming from the center of the galaxy. It's not like anything we've ever seen." The commander's eyes widened. "What do you mean, not like anything we've seen?" The technician hesitated. "It's a form of communication, but it's not using any of the frequencies we know. And it's spreading, like a wave moving through the fabric of space." The commander's heart sank. He realized what this could mean. The humans, they're sending something, and we're too late to stop it. As the days passed, the Dravens grew more desperate. The signal from Earth grew stronger, and their fleet's confusion reached a fever pitch. They couldn't understand the signal, but they could feel its presence, like a weight pressing down on them. Something big was coming, and they were powerless to stop it. Back on Earth, the general stood quietly in front of the command center's window, staring out at the vastness of space. The stars seemed so far away, yet the future was unfolding before his eyes. He knew that humanity had reached the point of no return. The Dragon Empire might never be the same again. They might never understand what had happened or how it had all come to pass. But one thing was certain: humanity had changed the galaxy forever. They had proven that they were not a species to be ignored. They were not weak. They were not fragile. And no matter what happened next, the galaxy would never forget the name of Earth. As the final signal was sent out, the general turned to his officers. "We've done it. We've shown them what we can do. Now, we wait." And so, with the Dragon Empire in turmoil, with the galaxy in suspense, humanity stood at the precipice of a new era. They had proven their worth. And now, the future was in their hands. The galaxy would remember the day humanity was no longer underestimated. It was the day the Dragon Empire learned that Earth was not to be trifled with. It was the day humanity proved that they were more than just a blip in the universe. They were a force to be reckoned with. And in the quiet of space, the universe waited, as if holding its breath for the next move.